Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin, altcoins, and just a market overview in general. Listen, the markets have been very volatile recently. Of course, the world has just been going crazy. Tariffs, this, news that, Trump said this, this is going to happen. 2 days later, it's not going to happen. Pro crypto this, pro crypto that, maybe a little bit anti this, inflation here, right? Just a bunch of noise ultimately at the end of the day. But something that did happen is a big sell-off, right? So we can see that roughly for the last day or so, Bitcoin has been consolidating, right? Bitcoin has been mainly consolidating from, let's just say 110,500 to, let's just say 11,500, right? Let's just be simple with the numbers, right? We can see we have been consolidating. We tried to break out, right? We tried to break out, but every time we started to get near the all-time highs, we just didn't close higher, right? Although, at one point we could see the wicks went a little higher in terms of the actual candles closings. We were just getting lower and lower gradually, right? Lower and lower gradually until we broke structure, right? We can see that we broke this low over here, forming this lower low down here at roughly, $10,500. When we tried going back up, we simply did not have enough momentum, creating a lower high than this high over here, right? Here was the last relevant high. So if we just do high here, right? High, boom. Then we created the lower high, LH. There we go, LH. And boom, right? Lower high. And then we slammed, right? We slam. And this was probably during the news of, something with tariffs and stuff. For me, that's all manipulation. That is just an excuse to move the markets. Ultimately, I don't really care what the news is in general. The news for me is going to be 99% of the time irrelevant, unless, of course, literally, some type of recession news, some type of recession data, just certain specific headlines like, oh, this coin's owner, plans on doing X, Y, and Z that's going to destroy the coin, then yeah, headlines like that are important. But this tariff stuff, this overall just noise. So, we can see Bitcoin has been trending down, but today was a great opportunity for buys. In the Discord, we did call out certain buys because, ladies and gentlemen, on a red day, it is going to be always a good day to buy. Okay, just objectively speaking, especially that we do expect Bitcoin to start rallying very heavily in the very near future. Okay, we can see that we did tap off this 1 hour order block, and we can see that we are starting to pick up some momentum. Even if we just draw the structure, right, we can see the trend was very narrow until we kind of broke it, right? Until we kind of broke it. And now we can see we are slowly recovering. If we go and look at the liquidity, right? If we go look at the global liquidity, which we know with these certain settings that I have on, let me just choose a different color real quick because I actually do like this background. You probably have noticed a couple of different backgrounds from me over the last few days. Just a little bit of a what I call an identity crisis when it comes to trading and everything. Sometimes I just need to switch up the colors. Trust me, a lot of people go through this thing. Anyways, enough of that. But we can see, right, when we go to the data, ladies and gentlemen, right, we go look at the data, we can see that it's been pumping, right? Everything has been pumping. The blue is the liquidity. We are behind. When we take the final dip, before everything starts pumping and we go here, it is 91 days. So it is expected that next week is going to possibly be the last week before we pump. Okay, before we pump, if we do something like this, Alt V, we can see that boom, it is very nice. If we change this to red, that practically after this red line, which is either going to be next week or most likely the week after, that is when we are going to pump. Okay, you have to realize the markets, the way they work is they're usually going to fake out the first time. So this week is a fake out. Next week, it might try to fake out from the bottom. So we might see Bitcoin retrace a couple of thousand. But then the week after that, it is very, very likely and very, very probable that we will start rallying super, super high and super, super fast. Okay, even if we go to last time, right, we can see that boom, right, we went up, we had one candle that was a fake, right, one candle that was a fake, and then we just started to rally really, really hard. So, it's just a typical markets. I don't expect anything different. I really, really don't. It's just classic manipulation. But look, ladies and gentlemen, right? What does this mean? Well, for me, it means it is a good time to be overall buying, right? If you are trying to get in your final bags, I do believe now is going to be some of the best times and final times you will be buying for fairly cheap. Are you going to get the most premium price that you could have had back in, March and April time? No, not necessarily. But are you still going to be getting an extremely great discount? Yes, right? If we go to something like Coin Market Cap and we even just choose a random coin, we something like Render, right? I love using just Render as an example. Me, I hold a lot of Render. It is one of my biggest bag, if not my biggest bag. But we can see, right? Now, 2.5 billion market cap. I believe this coin at the minimum is going to be one of those coins that hits between 35 and 45 billion market cap, as that's going to be the new normal range for a lot of the top coins at the bare minimum. I expect at least, let's just say 30 to 40 coins to hit this at the bare minimum, if not even up to 50. So, for me, this coin is at least a 10 to almost, 15x type scenario. So, right, if I am looking at this price at 475 and I expect this coin to potentially be going up to 60, 70, $80 kind of fairly easily or in a fairly realistic world, then of course I'm going to be buying at 475, especially on a day that's red, right? Especially on a day that's red, because we can see, right, in the last couple of hours, we have went from 533, right? From 533 to all the way at one point at 462. And I literally bought near 1 o'clock today, and I literally bought roughly an hour ago. So if we look at my dollar cost averages, it is somewhere over here. So I bought a little bit under $5, and then I bought more aggressively just, if we look at the time, literally down here around 470, a little bit lower. So yeah, and I told my private community that, look guys, I bought, let's say hypothetically, $100 worth here. I put in 30% in my, 30% more on average in my position. So I put 130 here, getting a better average, right? And that for me is just good times to be buying. Everyone has a different plan. Some people don't want to be buying anymore. For me, the way I set up my lifestyle, the sacrifices I made, the money I make, I practically just kind of put it consistently into crypto because I am taking a very big gamble. I'm still fairly young, and right now it's going, it's a good time to be taking these types of risks. Maybe if you're older, right? Maybe if you're older and you only want, a 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10x, but you don't want to be over leveraging, maybe let's just say a certain amount of money. Maybe to you, you're willing to risk $10,000, $20,000, maybe 5% of your wealth, maybe 10%, whatever it may be, right? Everyone has different goals, different standards, different age. So for everyone else, it's a little bit different. For me, I'm just more risk heavy. That's why I've been consistently buying and dollar cost averaging at just great prices. What I find objectively, great prices, great times to be buying. I've been just consistently accumulating because, ladies and gentlemen, I know this altcoin season is going to be absolutely amazing, right? If we go to the others, right? If we go quickly to the others, if I could just find it and not be blind, thank you very, very much. Boom, right? We can see if we go to the others, go on the weekly, we can see how big altcoins exploded last time around, right? Last time around, they went from roughly, 50 to 75 billion, all the way upwards of 420 billion market cap in the first pump, right? In the first pump. So crazy, crazy gains, right? Crazy gains. If you just took the average, all right, even if you got in late, you could have honestly on average made 6.5 times your money. So not bad, not bad. I do expect, very, very big pumps this cycle. I do probably expect us to be hitting roughly a trillion in terms of the altcoins, not including the top 10, right? That would be very, very realistic to me, especially that there's going to be a lot of money, and especially that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for altcoins to really, really, really start, um, pumping. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for institutions, for other companies, for banks, for everything to make a lot of serious cash, a lot. Even if we just use the Fibonacci tool from the relevant high to the relevant bottoms, 1.6 is usually smashed everywhere, right? It is underwhelming. 2.2 is super, super realistic. Between 2.2 and 3.2 is always the realistic goal. So, that 800 billion to 1.1 trillion is going to be the target. And since 1 trillion is that round number, we could be definitely hitting that. Even if we take it from last time around, boom, right? Boom, boom, boom. Yes, I know, I took less capital to make these type of gains for altcoins, but you have to realize that although it takes more capital now, the whole world is getting in on it. So the context is different. It's balanced out once again, right? It is very, very balanced out. A lot of companies, a lot of countries are going to want to jump the bandwagon on altcoins too once they start becoming more and more relevant. Once they see, oh my gosh, these altcoins can go from $5 to $200, that they're going to manipulate it. It's just a game of manipulation. That is just how it is. But we can see insane gains, right? Even if we go to the others chart, including, excluding Bitcoin, right? Excluding Bitcoin, we can see that when we take it from the highs to the relevant bottoms, right? We can also see that, in May last time around, the first pump, we hit the 3.2 area. So it would not surprise me at all, right? It would not surprise me at all if we take it from these highs, right? If we take it from these highs to these relevant bottoms, and we would also hit between 2.2 and 3.2, which would be, roughly around that 3 trillion to, 3.6 trillion mark. Okay. Yes. Once again, it's going to require more money, but this time around, there's literally countries talking about it, multiple nations, there's multiple countries, banks, institutions racing for Bitcoin, Ethereum, other coins, and it's just going to trickle down. It's always trickled down. And I don't expect anything different. I don't care what people say. Sure, altcoins have been, underperforming a little bit compared to maybe previous cycles, but you also have to realize that Bitcoin dominance is not done its run. Bitcoin dominance is not done its run. And it doesn't really matter right now, altcoins this, altcoins that, until Bitcoin dominance does this thing, crashes, accumulates, and then we have the big altcoin season, which is going to be this big rally, right? Just the way this was, okay? Altcoins usually start becoming relevant once we get a crash, once this starts happening, and then of course, this big leg is the biggest of pumps, okay? That's just how it works, people. Remember that last time around when we dropped literally just like 6.5% in dominance, you saw how much altcoins pumped. Render went from $4 to 12. We had so many coins go absolutely nuclear, right? We've seen ICP have a rally from $7 to 15.5. We've seen something like Radium, right, go from like $1, like what, $1.60, $1.70, all the way up to like almost $9. So it's just going to happen again, but on a bigger scale. And that's when things, pumped, or sorry, when Bitcoin dominance dropped 6.5%. What's going to happen when it drops 30, 35, 40, 45%, right? And we get all the bandwagon in the world. Just think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Crazy times. But yeah, that is it. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. Love you guys so much, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye. Portfolio reviews, economic and global updates and news, frequent up-to-date technical analysis, and a very supportive community. Sell and buy calls and trading education is provided. If that sounds good to you, now is the time to act. Once the markets start moving, there is no I should've, coulda, woulda. Now is the time. If you want to take things to another level, we have the blueprint that covers everything from A to Z in crypto that you need. No fluff, no bullshit, just the most important news, fundamentals, and technicals to have you succeed in these markets.